Once David gets his gadgets and gizmos out of the way, I get to pass it over to Mark Smith to talk about float inspection. They just like to chit chat.
I don't advertise that, no. Are we ready for the most boring thing you're going to hear today? There's no way I can follow this guy. My name is Mark Smith. I am the owner of Airframes Unlimited here in Anchorage. I've been in business for 20 some years. In the hangar, yes. I've been smashing rivets for about 42 years now. I deal mostly with air carriers. I'm the guy they call when they got an engine column come open on a 4.7 or bird strike, or some of the major air carriers when they bend one up. I'm usually the guy who puts those all back together. I got thrown under the bus on this one. I was asked last minute, that's why there's no PowerPoint or anything. The subject is saltwater float maintenance, which I know is probably not that big a deal here in Anchorage, but I am currently doing rotational business out of Juneau, and they fly floats all year long. As you know, there's all the different materials used to build floats. Aluminum, you got steel, you got fiberglass, you got a lot of dissimilar metal. You need to really look at your dissimilar metal corrosions. If it looks like it's salt around fittings, say deck fittings or something like that, you might want to look a little bit closer before you do a hard landing and you just caved in the top of your floats because of the corrosion sandwich in between. Dave took some of my PowerPoints here earlier today about corrosion. Some of the things used, and my biggest pet peeve, to be honest with you, is going into the different air carriers and seeing an A&P mechanic out there with a die grinder, just grinding off. There are different thicknesses of skins. If you've got any corrosion stemming from around, say, a rivet pattern, chances are it's under the rivet too. Replace the rivet. You have limitations on your depth. I prefer to use glass beads and bead blasters, if anybody's familiar with that. Spot blasters or vacuum blast, which is one that vacuums it up and recovers, which is what the military uses. Your hardware, particularly amphibs, keep that well lubricated. Pull it out occasionally. Some of those manufacturers have inspection programs, 25-hour, 50-hour, 100-hour. If you're not flying that much, but you are in salt water, I highly recommend you washing them after each flight. Don't wait till you're 25 hours and take a good look at them. Make sure you get all your salt off of there. Do not use a pressure washer. The PSI is too strong. You can actually separate some of your sealants if they're used in between your different fittings for dissimilar metal. Just plain old clear garden hose water. Make sure you flush your wheel wells very well, particularly your nose trucks, and keep them well lubed so you don't end up with one getting hung or any failure. When I started doing this, we were very limited on what we had. Started in the military, basically acid etch Aladyne and a 2-part Boeing primer, green death as everybody calls it. That stuff still is what I prefer to use. Over the last few years, you see so many things that have come out. Corbon, CA1010. Jury's still kind of out on how well that stuff is holding up. I do highly recommend that you do pull your main attach hardware. I know if your floats sit all winter long on racks, nobody's really paying any attention to your deck fittings. And also those floats with just sitting will condensate. Those little pickup tubes you pump out, they're not getting all your water out. And if you are flying in salt water, you are getting some in that lid. I don't care what you try and do. You're gonna end up with it in your floats. I recommend you take, open them up a little more than once a year, depending on how you fly and what you're flying in. And flush them out thoroughly, use a vacuum, get it all out of there. And just pay particular attention to areas that are gonna be prone to corrosion. Terminal boards for your switches, your safety switches, your enunciator, gear up, gear down. Any electrical connections, those are very prone. Don't use the cheap butt splices. Get the environmental, that seal, and you won't have any problems with it. You'll find we still are changing them, trying to get away from that, but somebody in a last minute, hurry up, get it out the door, throws a regular butt splice on it, and 2 weeks later, you got a gear indication light. What do you do then? So, like I said, a lot of my talking points were taken away from me already, so. Oh, I did bring one little thing that I don't have. It's back in my coat, to be honest with you. It's a prep stick. I don't know if any of you have seen them. It's an Aladyne all-in-one prep stick. Military uses it, Boeing uses it. It's very good for spot repair, especially after you're bead blasted. If you see any gray or any discoloration after you do your removal process, you didn't get it all out. You shouldn't see any gray, any black, or anything other than that. With the high speeds, you tend to actually smear, depending on what the alloy is of your float. Some of the softer aluminums, you will smear and actually cover it up to where you won't see it. And a year, 2 years later, you got blisters showing up again. And after the second or third grinding, you don't have any meat left. So then you're calling me to replace bulkhead or top deck or whatever. And I hate working on floats. So there are shops that like doing that. I've done my share. I prefer just to keep smashing rivets on other things, rebuilding wings, flight controls, wrecked fuselages. I've worked on, between military and 42 years of pounding rivets, 30 plus different type of aircraft. I don't do any kite work. If anybody's looking to try and talk me into working on their cub or something like that, I'm the metal guy. Body and fender man for metal. That's pretty much all I really got. It's kind of short and sweet. I hope it was enough for everyone. Any questions?
What's your last name, Mark?
Smith.
In the back, hold on, let me get to you with the microphone.
Go ahead. It's Bond, right? You can get it from Aviol, which is now what, Boeing. They're not cheap. They're about $175 for a little, kind of almost looks like a bingo dabber. But you don't have to neutralize it. You can prime right over top. I'd recommend using, especially salt water. Keep up with your coatings, both inside and outside. Corbon is a good one to use inside. Comes in a spray or a can. It tends to dry. It doesn't leave a gummy residue like Corrosion X does. But every time you turn around, there's somebody bringing you some new product to try. With what I use in my shop is what the military was using. Boeing is still using it, and I figure it's pretty much tried and true. I worked on aircraft older than me that are still pristine looking when you climb in the tail or under the floor. You can find all this stuff. Oh, another thing I'm not real fond of is this 5200 or 4200. I know a lot of guys are using that to patch their floats. The white sticky shit, excuse my French. That stuff I've found to disbond quite a bit. It's great for a boat because your boat's sitting in the water, so it doesn't have to deal with temperature change a whole lot. But on floats, you're sitting out in the sun on dry land. They're going to heat up, they're going to stretch, going to shrink. If you take a pressure washer to it, you'll peel that stuff right off. I know Seaplane sells it, Reeve over there, everybody sells it. I prefer good old Pro Seal. And that's what I use for all my repairs anyway.
I got a question. I come from the boat industry. They say that zincs work in salt water, but not in fresh water. They'd rather use magnesium. Do you agree with that? I'd put those on floats?
I haven't had to deal, like I said, I don't work on floats, so to speak, when it comes to those. But Dave did mention something that there was issues with counterfeit or fake ones. Is that what I interpreted earlier? Environmentally, that's like all the new stuff, like the MEK substitute and some of this other junk. It doesn't work. Yeah, I mean, they make it safe and friendly, but for who? You spend twice as much time trying to do something that if you went back, 20 years to the things we used then, 30 years, your end results will last longer.
I got a question back here. So I've used that prep stick on antenna installations before, or tried to anyway, and what I noticed is it appears just to be iodine. You said it was all in one, but I could not get that stuff to stick, and I talked to another mechanic at that same repair station, also had the same issue. Do they make an etch pen prior to use?
Well, what it was, your surface wasn't cleaned, or you wiped it down with MEK or something.
Clean.
Did you take Scotch-Brite to it?
Yeah, yep. It was the same cleaning process I would use for any etch and iodine process.
Okay, was it expired? Was it contaminated?
That's a good question. I don't know. I guess, so my question is to you is, do you usually just require the single prep stick with the iodine? You said it's all in one. So you're saying when you get it clean, you apply that, it should stick on its own?
Yes.
Okay. I'll try it again sometime. Thank you.
And if I can get back to my code, I'll hold one up, and it's Bondrite is the name of it. Bondrite stick. And it has a mil-spec number attached to it, if anybody's interested in that. Any more questions? Am I good? Thank you.
Okay, everybody, thank you for your patience today. I know it's been a long day. I'm back here behind you if you're trying to figure out where I'm at. The process going forward, we're going to email your certificates to you. I know a couple of you folks don't have email addresses. Come talk to me if you don't. I'll figure out a solution for you. So check your emails. If you don't see it come through, please let me know, and I'll make sure that you find a way to get that from us. So that's all I have for you. Hope you guys enjoyed the topics today. We're going to send out some emails afterwards. If you have ideas of people to present into the future, we would love to hear that. We want to make this more enjoyable and useful into the future, and appreciate that feedback. So thank you all so much for coming. That's all we have today.